Now, I am absolutely delighted to welcome Pastor John Piper to the first day of Forum 2020. John, it's an absolute thrill to have you join us. Thank you.
Thank you. It's great to be here. Wish I could be there in person.
That really is a shame that you can't.
Right.
Now, John, here's a sentence for you. God is most glorified in us when we are most satisfied in him. What does that mean? And why is it such a foundational insight for you in your own life?
Yeah, well, the reason it's foundational is because 52 years ago, when I was probably the age of some of the students, I was 22, in fact, I was wrestling in the years leading up to 22 and all the discoveries were made with two forces in my life. One was I was taught as a boy, and I believed it with all my heart, that I should live for the glory of God. 1 Corinthians 10:31, whether you eat or drink or whatever you do all to the glory of God. It was in me. I couldn't escape it. I knew it was biblical. I knew it was true. I knew if my life was going to count, it would have to be for the glory of God. And yet there was this other force, namely John Piper wanted to be happy. He could not want to be happy. And for reasons that might exist philosophically or personally, those two things for me seemed at odds. And I couldn't put the two together. And then in a thunderbolt in the fall of 1968, C.S. Lewis and Jonathan Edwards and Dan Fuller teamed up with the Bible to turn my world upside down. That's why I'm describing it, because you ask about foundations. Turn my world upside down to show me C.S. Lewis in the sermon, what's it called? Well, the sentence goes like this. We are like children who are making mud pies in the slums because we can't imagine what a holiday at the sea is like. We are far too easily pleased. I'd never heard anybody say that the problem with the world is not that people are trying to be happy, but that they aren't trying hard enough to be happy. And then I saw Psalm 16:11, which says, in your presence is fullness of joy. At your right hand are pleasures forevermore. And I thought, well, that can't be improved. Full and forever can't be improved. And so it must be right to want to be happy in God. And then the key came from Philippians 1, where Paul said, my heart's desire, my expectation is that Christ would be magnified in my body, whether by life or by death, for to me to live is Christ and to die is gain. And the logic of that text, namely, my goal in life is for Christ to look majestic and beautiful and great in my life. I want it to happen when I live. I want it to happen when I die. And it happens when I die, when dying is gain. And I thought, how does that work? How does Christ look magnificent when for me to die is gain? And the answer is in verse 23, because to die is gain means to die is to be with Christ, which means this. This is my summary then of the package insight that landed on me. Christ is most magnified in John Piper as he dies, when his dying is experienced as such satisfying gain because of Christ, that he can lose everything and still count it gain and be satisfied. And that's what makes Jesus look great. And all you have to do is just draw out the implications of that Christ or God is most glorified in me when I'm most satisfied in him, especially at the points of greatest loss, greatest suffering. In other words, the world can see what is magnificent to John Piper if my heart is so satisfied in him that in the moments of death and suffering, I do not lose my joy. So the two tension points for my life came together into one. They weren't in tension anymore. I not only I didn't have to choose between the glory of God and the joy of John Piper's soul, but I dare not choose, because if God is glorified in my being satisfied, for me to be indifferent to satisfaction in God means that I won't glorify him. So that's a nutshell of what I've given 52 years to thinking about.
Now, it might be, John, the experience of many students, many staff, relay workers coming up to Forum, that it's not so much the weight of glory that's leaving an impression on them, but the weight and disappointment of indwelling sin. Maybe they've messed up over the summer. What would you say to those who've arrived day one of Forum, and that's their predominant thought?
Yeah. To be told that you must be happy in order to glorify God is a double effect. It's liberating and it's devastating.
Yeah.
And you're asking about the devastating part. I mean, it's liberating because who's ever told you you got to be happy? You're free to pursue happiness. Pursue it now with all your might. And yet then you realize, well, wait a minute. He's not just talking about any happiness. He's talking about happiness at God's right hand, and I don't feel it. So I'm devastated. That's the battle. So what I want to say to students especially is get the battle clear. I mean, it will be a battle till the day you die. I'm 74. I fight the battle every morning. So, for example, this morning, this is right off front burner. John Piper usually gets up in the doldrums for whatever biological or genetic reason. I'm not a morning guy. I wake up and have to get saved, as it were, all over again. So I go to my Bible and I'm desperate. And here's what I read this morning, and it's relevant universally. Jesus says to John Piper this morning, as if he were in the living room in front of my chair, "Blessed are you when people hate you and exclude you and revile you and spurn your name as evil on account of the Son of Man. Rejoice and leap for joy." I mean, I just stop and say, are you kidding me, Jesus? You're saying leap for joy when my best intentions are called evil. And then he gives the reason, for great is your reward in heaven. Now, if that logic is not stupid, if it's not nonsense, there's the answer. John Piper needs to get crystal clear, and all of you students need to get crystal clear. What's the reward? What's the payoff? What is Christ to me? Is it worth it? And I've been working in Ephesians recently, and one verse filled up reward for me, and that was Ephesians 2:7, where it says, he made us alive with Christ, seated us at his right hand in the heavenly places, in order that, here comes the reward, in order that in all the coming ages, he might show the riches of his grace in kindness toward me in Christ Jesus. He's going to spend eternity pouring out divine riches, which are inexhaustible, on me of grace in kindness forever, so that they are never boring. They'll always be fresh. And I need to meditate on that, dwell on that, fix my eyes on Jesus as the source of that until my joy is restored. It's a battle to the end, but it's a battle to see Christ and his reward.
John, thank you so much. I've got one more question. We are shortly going to be looking at Nehemiah and delighting in God, revering God. But one of the things that's really struck me in your speaking and your writing has been a warning to avoid the debtor's ethic, where we feel permanently in debt to God for the death of his son. Can you tell us how we can avoid that while at the same time keeping a proper focus and delight on Christ crucified?
I have no problem with anybody thinking of their lives as being indebted to the grace of God, provided they never, never, never think about payback.
Yeah.
In other words, let's put it this way. Suppose you wake up this morning and you say, I'm going to live my life out of gratitude today for all that God has done for me. Now, I'm calling that the debtor's ethic because it throws all attention on past grace.
Yeah.
That's Christ crucified, and there's no Christianity without it and no hope for the future without it. But here's the problem. I'm going to take some steps today like this, and if I have in my mind, okay, here's a step of payback, and here's a step of payback, and here's a step of payback, and I'm gradually paying back my mortgage payment that I took out at the cross, that's blasphemy. And it's blasphemy because in 1 Corinthians 15, it says, by the grace of God, I am what I am. And his grace toward me was not in vain, but I worked harder than any of them, but it was not I. It was the grace of God that was with me, which means that every step you take in the next hour or 50 years, every step you take that you're thinking is payback, it's not payback. It's dependent on more grace, more grace, more grace. Every step you take in reliance upon Jesus is going deeper into debt. So I'm happy with debtor talk, provided we say, okay, my goal in life and eternity is to get as deep into debt with God as I possibly can. The giver gets the glory. No talk of payback, just talk of more grace enabling me to do more work. And you said the cross. That keeps the cross in perspective because it was all bought by the cross. Every millisecond of grace that I enjoy was purchased by Jesus on the cross.
John, what a wonderful note to finish on. We are so thrilled, so grateful to you. Thank you so much for getting us off to a brilliant start on day one of Forum. Thank you, dear brother.
Oh, my pleasure to be with you. God bless all of you.